Okay, I'm getting started. Yeah, it seems like we've got quite a nice number of attendees this morning. Welcome to the BPESA's webinar, Digital Insights. This is the fourth in a series. The question that we're answering or that we're looking into is, can South Africa succeed in this digital age? At a global level. And so today we've got a very special panel. We're going to be discussing something that is probably not all that evident, in terms of normal operations, even in companies across the board. And that is all the integration and the back-end automation that gets done in order to ensure that systems operate efficiently and that we can basically delight our customers. So in the call today, we're going to just do a welcome. I'm going to give you an overview of BPESA, as I always do in these webinars. We're going to do introduction to the panel members. They're each going to introduce themselves. And then we're basically going to have an open discussion. And I've got two polls that we will run today. And then at the end, we'll close off with question answers. And if there are any responses in the questions, then we'll look to answering those. So please post your questions and we'll have a look at those throughout. We'll either respond in the answer box, or we might even discuss it towards the end of the call. And so with that, let me then tell you about who BPESA is. BPESA is an industry body for global business services. And it's a not-for-profit company that serves as the industry body and the trade association for the GBS sector in South Africa. In a nutshell, and I'm not going to read everything on the slide, but in a nutshell, in this industry, we address the supply side, which is the skills development, and specifically digital skills development. And then on the demand side, it's about creating opportunity. It's about selling South Africa to the global community and the market and penetrating that global market out there and ensuring that as a sector, not only are we growing in South Africa, not only are the systems and the environment in place for that growth to occur, but that we're also growing in the international community. In a nutshell, BPESA provides our members and stakeholders the insights and the support to succeed. So as a BPESA member, we basically put you into an environment. We support you both locally and internationally in order for you to grow and to succeed. If you look at the primary function of this sector and of BPESA, our focus is on job growth and job numbers. We've got an aggressive target that by 2030, we will create 500,000 new jobs. We are well on track to do that. COVID-19 did cause a bit of stunted growth in the number of jobs. But I think you'll see that even through the COVID period, we were growing, we were adding jobs. Our up-to-date job report is due to be released, and it's above expectation, which is amazing that through this period, this sector has been able to grow. If you look at where this growth is coming from, then our traditional area of business has been in BPO. We've been focusing on the English-speaking countries. We're starting to move into Europe and Asia, and the rest of Africa is also on our radar for future growth and expansion. Shared services has been growing for the last number of years, and huge potential in this area. legal processes, knowledge services, finance and accounting, and human resources, and many more that we're starting to uncover that we will add to, and we will grow, and we will position this country in the world stage, to deliver these types of services. The other area that is of interest that we're starting to work not only internally, but also with the larger enterprises in South Africa, and that is the area of reshoring. Many companies in South Africa have offshored jobs to countries like India and other Asian countries. And we're looking to not just think about the reshoring, but also thinking about the skills and the requirements that are needed in order to deliver on those services as we reshore them. And then obviously the area for today and the focus for today is the development of digital and ICT outsourcing and services, starting at technical support, going all the way through to testing, data services, analytics, cloud engineering, etc. And then also growing sectors, personalized services. So the focus for today is on digital. It's on the type of services that we believe the sector should be looking into, and that South Africa should be looking into, not only to increase the performance of our operations, but also to develop the services that can add value to the rest of the world. So the question that we're answering throughout this webinar series is, can South Africa attain the status of a leader in the delivery of IT outsourcing and digital services? And we will continue to discuss this question. We will continue to add to the answer, because I think this is a long-term answer. It's not something that one just answers in one single idea. And so the idea of these webinars is for us to get into this. And the way we will do that is to bring on board industry specialists, leaders out there in our market that are really making a difference, making a change, entrepreneurs, and in some cases, leaders within large enterprises. And so with that, today I've got the privilege of inviting to this discussion 3 panel members that I'm really excited to introduce to you. Firstly, there is going to be Jacques Fourie from Nucleus IT. I'll be handing over to him shortly. He'll do a short introduction. Then I'll be handing over to Mike Steyn. And then following that will be Jean-Pierre from Tech Hub. And so with that, Jacques, I wonder if you could just come on screen Jacques is an avid systems integration enthusiast, and he's also the co-founder of Nucleus IT. He spent many years at Software AG. He's got more than 20 years of experience, and I'm very excited to have you on the call today, Jacques. I'm going to hand over to you, and then you can just tell us a little bit more about yourself and just your philosophy around technology and your area of focus.
Yes, thanks a lot for that kind introduction, Neville. This is obviously my first webinar that I've been involved in. We're very excited to be part of this. I come from a consultative background. I've been involved in various projects, big, small, big organizations, small organizations. And in 2016, we started our own organization, a partner and myself, the co-founder, Kobus Boshoff. What was for us interesting is, we come from a strong project delivery background, but engaging with big, large corporate customers, we found that, as a consultant, there's so many various skills that you need to adopt. It's not just the technical skills, but you also need to have a business acumen and understand the business that the customer operates. So we primarily are a services and solutions organization, which specialize in business process automation and integration. As I mentioned, we do follow a consultative approach. So it's not that we come in, we we recommend and suggest based on the roadmap of the customer what we would recommend from a solution perspective, and help them implement that and go down their roadmap and strategy. So it's pretty much having a long-term trusted relationship with our customers to make sure that we can make their strategy or realize their strategies. We work with small, medium businesses, big corporate environments, different industries, from finance and insurance, manufacturing, logistics, retail, you name it, right? I think the core that we do is integration, and in all walks of life and businesses, you will always find some sort of integration, whether it's point to point or whether it's system to system or application to application. There's so many various differences. Now, when we talk about the topic of integration automation, a lot of challenge that we see from a lot of organizations are primarily based on the following, it's the number and the variety of applications that they have in their organization landscape. It can quickly become a vast array and differences of applications that they need to communicate between, whether it's in-house applications, packaged applications that they bought off the shelf, your ERP or CRM systems, or your legacy systems. And then a couple of questions comes to mind, how do you ensure the reliable connectivity between these systems? How do you make these things talk to one another? Another factor is the diversity of the data. You've got heterogeneous data models and data formats. You need to work with data in rest, data in motion. There's so many various things that you need to consider, different communication protocols. How do you go about transforming this data, making sure that it's consistently enabled to do that fluent data exchange between the different systems and applications? And then you've also got now, different systems and distributed systems and different data deployment models, your public cloud, your private cloud, your on-premise, this hybrid sort of integration that needs to happen. Things like, how do you communicate between these different systems? Because there's security, there's latency. How do you make sure that these things actually can work together harmoniously? And then there's also the lack of tools and standards in these organizations. There's the lack of the integration now, especially in small organizations. Big organizations, you still get quite a lot of experienced individuals, and we work quite intensively alongside those individuals to realize their strategy with the implementation and the tools that we are specialized in. And then obviously the complexity of these tools for non-integrators like the small organizations, they don't have integration capability, they don't know the know-how, they don't have the experience, and they don't have the people. So all of these factors put certain constraints on the speed at which an organization can obviously innovate. And we all know in this digital age, innovation is key. You need to be able to adapt to changing market situations. You need to focus better on the customer. You need to make sure that your business can survive any pandemic like we had this last year. The only way that you can do that is by pivoting your systems, your people, your processes internally, and make sure that your business is aligned towards that strategy that you've put forward. Now, integration plays quite a vital role in making the communication and establishing communications between this digital ecosystem. I like to use the word digital ecosystem because it in a nutshell, a nice, if I can put it like that, a nice definition of a digital ecosystem is a complex network of stakeholders that connect online and interact digitally in ways that create value for all. Now, once again, in all relationships that you have, business, personal, there's value in it, right? Whether you work with customers, there's value exchange between information, there's value exchange between the products or the services that you provide. And businesses operate on this philosophy. So we're all really part of this digital ecosystem. And to be part of this digital ecosystem, you need to also make sure that your business is aligned to this, to be a participant of this digital ecosystem. And that's using the right processes, using the right systems, the digital systems that you implement, and obviously having the right people with the right skills internally employed to drive this business forward. And I think, to answer your question, is South Africa, becoming a good leader in IT outsourcing and the digital skills? Definitely. I think we've sprung forward bounds and leaps with this this pandemic the last year, and it's put forward a lot of opportunities for a lot of businesses, both small and big. So definitely, I think we play a vital role going forward in that. Thanks, Neville.
Great, thank you, Jacques. Wow, you've mentioned so many things there that I want to ask you questions on, but I'm going to wait a while until we've heard from Mike. So, Mike, please, if you can come on screen. Mike has had 20 years of IT business experience. He started in the field, worked his way up to senior positions in SAPS and the State Information Technology Agency, and started his own company, merged, and is currently in a senior role within Trivector. So Mike, if you could just fill in the gaps and give us your view. I know you come more from a consulting side, but very keen to hear your introduction.
Thanks, Neville, and greetings to everyone on the call. Thank you very much for the opportunity to join you. It's also first time for me to join one of these webinars. Just a little bit about Trivector briefly. We were established about 20 years ago. As Neville mentioned, our focus has been predominantly on consulting services, with a particular focus on process management, helping organizations to establish process management capabilities and to leverage those capabilities to drive process improvements. We essentially, as an African company with a footprint in Gauteng and down in the Western Cape as well, but we've also been doing work across both into Africa as well as into European countries, as well as recently in Australia. I'm going to be talking a bit to you today, a little bit about some of the concept called process mining, mainly, and how I believe that's adding value in our space, and potentially how it could add value for organizations like yourselves. So when we look at our traditional way of looking at process analysis and process improvements, these have typically involved modeling of business processes in order that we can actually understand our processes, get proper insight, and to use that as a basis for analysis and improvement of the processes. Over the last couple of years, we've also found a growing need for understanding not just the internal processes, but also looking at it from a customer point of view. So we're looking at things like customer journey mapping, to understand our customer interactions and to evaluate their experience and to look at opportunities to improve our customer experiences. We've enriched this information around our processes with things like time studies, for example, where we've gone in and either estimated or measured the time it takes to execute the different activities within the process. So all in the idea of trying to get sort of insight in terms of how well our processes are working and how we can potentially improve them. We've also used traditional mechanisms like business BI or business intelligence solutions to give us KPIs or data that we can relate back to processes. But there's always been some challenges in these traditional approaches. One of the challenges is that we've generally engaged a user community to understand these processes and to document them. We would usually be limited to a few individuals, so we would get a view of the process as they understand it. Given the effort and time and cost associated, we usually just document a single view of how we see the process working, maybe one or two alternative flows around it, but generally it would be kind of one standard view of process, which in terms of the concept of standardization of process is not necessarily an issue, but it gives us limited insight in terms of what the different variations and how process actually works in the organization. A lot of the metrics that we use sometimes to base our analysis are subjective and sometimes to some degree inaccurate. So there's always an element of sort of limited value that we can get from that. So more recently, we've been looking to the concept of process mining as an alternative way of getting insight and getting doing analysis around processes. And the concept is essentially most modern day processes have a fairly significant element of automation in them, where there's someone logging onto a system or registering a call, capturing some information, doing an inquiry on a system. And all those interactions essentially leave a digital track, which consists of these sort of event data. It may be in the form of a transactional record, or it may be in the form of an audit log entry that records information as people are executing the business processes. And the idea of process mining has been around for quite a while. There's a lot of different products out there. We don't necessarily promote any particular product, but more recently we've seen an increase in adoption. And what process mining does is it allows one to effectively import this event data into a process mining environment, and from that get a reverse engineered view of your process. So it allows you to visualize process, but which is sort of if you could look at it, a reverse engineering of your business process model effectively, except that now we're getting all the accurate data. We're getting, first of all, the different variations. So not just one view of the process, but each time a process is executed, that is recorded, and one can group those into different ways. So there may be certain more dominant ways where majority of the people execute a process in a particular way, but then we'd also pick up all the variations for how different process users may be executing processes differently. So typically in that event data, we're getting some sort of case ID, whether it would be something like a ticket number or a customer number, or something that helps us to track the events relating to a particular process. We're getting information about the steps or activities that take place. Typically include things like when was it initiated, possibly how long did it take, and things like that, and when does the next step initiated. So that allows us not only to visualize the process, but also to get accurate information in terms of how long did the process take, for example. How long did individual steps take, or what was the wait time between steps? And this gives us some insight in terms of potential bottlenecks. It gives us insights in terms of loopbacks, for example, where work is redone, and so forth, which gives us a lot richer and more accurate data set that we can use in our process analysis ability. So this information is typically used in organizations for various purposes. Some of the common scenarios, traditionally it's used as by process engineers or process analysts to look at delays and bottlenecks and to identify areas for improvement and optimization of processes. But one of the nice things that process mining gives you that other sort of approaches or techniques don't is around this identification of variance. And through the analysis of these variants, one can potentially identify best practices. So there may be someone within the environment that's doing things slightly different. So that may not be the most common way of doing processes, but one can measure the results in terms of throughput time and so forth, and pick that out as a best practice and say, well, or sexual parts of the way that process has been executed, or that variation has been executed, and say, well, let's adopt our standard way of doing things to bring it in line with that, which is very useful. One's also able to do some sort of benchmarking. So one's able to, for example, based on some sort of additional data, like, for example, by classifying by product type, or maybe by geographical area, or by department or something, one can see, well, how does department A's processes compare to department B? And from there, one can get some useful insight in terms of the differences and where there may be opportunities for improvement and so forth. Another common use case, which is becoming more dominant, is looking at comparison between what we plan to do and what's actually happening. That's one of the challenges we have in the process community, is that we go through the process of designing processes and defining the end state in terms of what we would like it to be. But often things work differently for various reasons. And sometimes there's good reason why it's been done differently. Process mining allows us to understand how processes are actually executed, as opposed to how we think they should be executed or how we've designed them to be executed. That can be extended also in terms of compliance, for example. If we know, for example, that there's some critical control items that are required for compliance purposes or so, we can also get insight in terms of how the processes are in fact being executed and whether they're in fact compliant. So process mining is a technique where we can get information directly out of this digital footprint that we find in organizations, where we can use that information to visualize process, to analyze process, and to get a hold of some really rich data. In preparation for this, I've unfortunately not done too much work in things like call centers for so, but we've done quite a bit of work in the financial sector. But we did look at a couple of use cases. Just by way of example, I came across one case study where a call center in Europe had a look at their data over a period of 2 months and had a look at how their call center was operating, and they picked up significant variations in terms of how different call center operators were handling the same type of process. And out of that, they were then able to identify some best practices. They were using that data to understand which was the optimal scenarios or variations of these processes, and then took best practice out of that and then used that and adopted that. And that resulted in significant savings over 150,000 euros per annum were made in the call center space.
Mike, can I just interject here? And because you're getting into so many amazingly interesting areas here that that I just want to get John on as well, and then I think if we could get into some of these, in the open discussion, that'll be great. But thank you so much for that introduction. Thanks, Mike. And then so quickly moving on to Jean-Pierre Dutoy, who is the Chief Commercial Officer of Tech Hub. Tech Hub is a member of the GB Group, involved in developing innovative technology products and services, including intelligent automation, robotic process automation, and artificial intelligence. Now, I know, Jean, you have a different approach to how or maybe not a different approach, but I think you've got obviously a lot of experience from a contact center perspective. So if you just give us a short introduction, and thank you for being on the panel, John.
All right, morning, Neville. Morning, everyone. So I think you've basically stolen my intro on who I am, so I can skip that one. But like Neville said, I'm the commercial officer at Tech Hub. We focus on using innovative and advanced technologies like AI and RPA and intelligent automation to build customized solutions for obviously the entire market, but quite largely focusing within the BPO market. From a personal side, I have been working predominantly within the call center market, within multiple channels and multiple industries for over 10 years now, being involved from the floor, but being involved all the way up into strategic planning and execution. Now, one of our key focuses within the Tech Hub ecosystem is looking at using digital processing in a different way to create a value-adding proposition to our clients that sets them apart from their competitors. So To give you an idea, so one of our key tools that we make use of in delivering these solutions is robotic process automation. It's a technology that has been around. A lot of people might know its predecessor called screen scraping. So that's basically, when they designed the first wheel made out of stone, that was screen scraping. Where at the moment we had RPA, incorporating AI, which is basically your floating cars. So what RPA is the ability to take a piece of software that gets installed on a machine and to configure and to a degree teach that software how to mimic and repeat repetitive functions and tasks that a person would do. So obviously, being quite involved in the call center industry, I'm going to use some examples there. But traditionally, whenever our BPO clients got quite a lot of new work coming in, the first thing that a lot of them go to is, listen, I've got more work, employ more people. But within the competitive landscape, this isn't the route you can take anymore. Our labor cost is increasing. We need to be more competitive. We need to provide a high quality, a faster quality, and provide it at a lower price. And obviously, our labor costs doesn't change. So that is where technologies such as AI and RPA actually plays quite a big role. So what RPA does is, in being able to mimic human behavior, we can actually teach a bot to perform repetitive functions that a human would normally do in a business process. A simple example, and a lot of stuff that we do is, for instance, in data capturing. Quick example of a project that we're currently doing within the short-term insurance industry is that we've got a client that requires certain documents to be vetted with the actual end user, and that requires our agents to actually phone and speak to the end user or the client and actually engage with them. And that's basically the function of a person. But one of those key tasks is now actually taking that document that they have that the customer completed and actually recapturing that on the client's third-party system. Now that takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of time. And using RPA, you can actually teach a bot to say, okay, listen, read this document and actually capture it for my agent on the screen. So actually working with an agent that we refer to as a digital assistant for them. Now, the whole idea behind that is being able to employ our workers to be able to do their functions that they do on a day-to-day basis, but be able to, first of all, do it faster, a lot of times a lot more accurate, and having the added benefit of being able to have our staff and our BPO employees being able to do more in a day and provide that, obviously, a bit more of a better quality of service to our end clients, being able to do more work within a day-to-day basis, and creating more value, because that's the main thing that we want. It is we're employing people within our businesses and our BPO environments to perform an activity, but we need them to be value adding. And the idea behind RPA is to take all of those repetitive, non-value adding activity and actually getting a worker to do that. Now, you can do these kind of functions in the example that I just gave, which is we refer to as a digital assistant. So that is actually a AI RPA bot that actually works with an agent on their machine, assisting them in doing the activity. But a big process of that is also your back-end processing, because there's a lot of these repetitive processes that we make use of people to do, but that is so mundane and so repetitive in how its function works, and where you don't actually need to speak or engage with a person, that you can actually teach these bots to do them as back office processes. A lot of that is within the finance industries, within the insurance industries, where there's a lot of document processing, where you've got documents coming in, new applications, new policies, and policy changes, and all these kind of things that needs to be read, data extracted and captured on either one or multiple systems. And that's also, just touching on that, a very valuable factor of RPA is the fact that it can work with any application that runs on a computer. So it works with Word and Outlook and Excel and any ERP system, Sage, SAP. It's got the ability to interact in all of it because it's simulating how a person works in the environment. So that is basically, it's a very high level one. It's obviously a bit more in depth than exactly how it works and all that. But the idea behind RPA is to take these repetitive, mundane tasks that you perform on a day-to-day basis and rather take that away from a person, so that they focus on more value-adding activity within your BPO environment, and rather give those repetitive functions to a back-office robot to actually do for you. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Neville.
Great. Thank you, Jean, for that. I mean, I think what I've picked up from these three discussions is that, you know, if you look at the life cycle of a customer, or you look at the life cycle of a particular discrete process within an organization, or a function within an organization, then certainly there's a huge dependency on back-end systems integration that is going to make sure that the process is followed. Also that that the effects of those integrations translates into value when you look at those, you know, what the business objective is. So I know, Mike, you went into some nice information on how you could use you know, business data and data intelligence to actually understand the impact of processes on, you know, what you're trying to achieve with at a business level. And then Jean nicely covered, you know, when you brought in that idea of, you know, the enhancement to human performance, you know, and basically creating that assisted enhancement for human activities, specifically in the contact center, where, you know, there are mundane repetitive tasks that add no real value to the interaction, but need to be captured. I think a lot of contact centers battle with after call work, and how do they reduce that? And most of that after call work is trying to clean up you know, clean up the bits that aren't integrated. And then Jacques, specifically from your perspective, you know, taking that integrate first process, this is the way that I sort of read it, is that, you know, trying to connect all these diverse technologies and applications together, I think is very important. Now with that, I want to put up the first poll. So Sam, if you can just get up the first poll for us. And, you know, a question on, you know, barriers to progress. You know, which element of your organization, production environment is your greatest concern and you're lacking behind? If everyone can just respond to that. I'm going to carry on while you guys respond to that poll. I'm going to just get back to Jacques. You mentioned a couple of very interesting things. Jacques, I know, do you still have that digital ecosystem statement that you made? Can you just read that out again? Because I tried to make a note of that, but you were too quick for me. And Jacques, you're on mute?
Yes, yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
Neville. Yes, I do have that. So I've actually got two different ones. The one is from Forbes, which is a digital ecosystem is a complex network of stakeholders that connect online and interact digitally in ways that create value for all. The Gartner defines digital ecosystem as an interdependent group of actors, enterprises, people, things, sharing standardized digital platforms to achieve a mutually beneficial purpose. So it's similar to the other one, they just use different wording.
Yes. And I think the focus for me that I took out of that was the emphasis, well, certainly on the first one, of value. You know, in every time, you know, we often forget the importance of, you know, we often extract ourselves trying to get things to work together and to communicate together and connect that system with that system. And we often just forget to actually look at, okay, so what is the value of creating that integration or creating that connectivity? And I think it always comes back to me, certainly it comes back to the, you know, who are you ultimately serving? And many organizations serve their customers. And so what is the impact on customers when you're looking at an ERP system or a back-end logistics system and you're tying data together? You know, how does that actually impact that relationship with that customer? So, so I think that's important to take note of.
Neville, sorry to interject here, but the last answer to the poll was should have been people, not systems. We had systems twice. So it's processes, systems, or people. So meaning the right IT skills, the right skills gap. You know, do you have that as a lack in your organization? I think It's understanding processes, then having the right systems in place, and then obviously the right skills as well, or the right people.
All right. So if you could, if everyone can just take note of that. Thanks for that, Jacques. Sam, when I don't see the results, so I think you can see the results. So when you've got a decent results, do you put them up, or how does that?
Yeah, apologies, Nev. I was just trying to change that last question. I only saw it now, but if people, if the audience will please note that the last question refers to people. I've read polling, and then I will share the results shortly.
All right. Well, if you can sort that out, we'll carry on yet discussing these important things. The other one that you mentioned, Jacques, which I think is important for everyone. I don't think everybody doesn't understand this. We all know this. No matter how we try to minimize the number of apps, we keep adding more apps. I think in this COVID period, many organizations have just gone out, have collected a lot more applications that they are now using. And so without much effort, you know, we just keep adding applications because it adds value to the business. I think the point that you make in your digital ecosystem is that while a system in itself might add value, it's that interaction between these many systems that can now actually detract from that value. I mean, is that a correct statement?
Yes, Neville, definitely. I think, you know, you need to consider what is right for your business right now. You know, there's a whole lot of hype in the market about, you know, digital transformation and what does that mean, and what is this bandwagon that everybody's jumping on. So, you know, different industries and different organizations have different strategies. Now, for me, it's important to have a balanced approach in terms of not grabbing any system that you think could add value to your operational environment, but is it adding to your core value, your core business line? You know, is it adding value to that? Because you just introduce another level of complexity the more systems you introduce into the environment. Now, because information sits in different systems, you need collaboration between these systems, you need information from all of these systems, and tying all of that back together then becomes a spaghetti incident, if I can call it like that, because now you struggle with spreadsheets, people exporting stuff, trying to transform things and creating spreadsheets, and now you're ending back up where you actually started. So the one thing that you should consider is, once again, what is right for my business right now? At this stage of my business, what is going to provide me that maximum value with minimal effort? And making sure that you make the right decisions. Now, once again, for a novice business owner that does not know technology, well, they can easily make an incorrect decision around the technology that they choose, purely because someone either sold it to them, or they do not know what they actually need. So, you know, consulting with the experts out there, you know, bringing an outside expert in to say, understanding your business, understanding what you need right now, and moving at the pace that the organization can adapt. You need to have that fine balance.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jacques. And so, Mike, can you give an example? I mean, let's say you walk into a customer, they've got so many systems, the processes they think are okay, they're evaluating those processes based on the reporting that they currently get. So they have a lot of information. I mean, the contact centers especially have a lot of information. But how do you come in and work with those clients to actually understand where are the inefficiencies, you know, especially when they've got 15, 20 different apps, you know, that all contribute in one way or another to that customer journey? You're on mute, Mike.
Sorry,
okay.
Thanks, Neville. Yeah, so the challenge sometimes is as you rightly pointed, not too little data, but sometimes just, you know, there's sometimes so much data and understanding, making sense of that information, so that one is able to get to some useful insights and stuff is where the challenge sometimes happens. And one of the things that we try and promote is when looking at data like that is to look at that data in the context of process. data on its own sometimes becomes difficult to understand, and we've had some examples of one of our clients a while back where the management expectation around what the nature of the problem, they came to us and said, this is the problem we have, can you assist us sorting that? And we went in and we pulled some data and stuff, and as we started looking at the data in itself, it was pointing towards one thing. But the moment we kind of brought it back into context of process and saying, well, let's understand within the process where this data fits in and so forth, we actually realized that the problem was caused earlier up in the process, and that they weren't really dealing with the root cause of the problem, but rather with the result or the knock-on effect that was caused through this. So we were able to sort of refocus them and get some additional data relating to other activities within the process, which allowed them in that scenario to solve the problem a lot cheaper and a lot more effectively than they would have otherwise done so. So that's one of the things that, you know, that kind of led us into where we ended up with this sort of, or starting to explore process mining more extensively, specifically was around this need for understanding data in the context of process. And that was one of the things that's been helpful, is being able to kind of shift through this mass of data and understand where it fits in and where it's playing.
Okay, thanks, Mike, for that. And then I guess, Jean, from your perspective, I mean, when you walk into a contact center, many times the enterprise process has been taken care of, or sort of. I mean, that's someone else's requirement within the IT department to make sure that, you know, all the core systems are well integrated. When you go in and you look at it from a customer journey perspective, I mean, how do you make that call or make that decision between, this is a robot that I'm going to get to actually intervene and enhance and support, versus, you know, yes, some systems integration work that we can get Jacques in to come and, you know, tie up and connect some of the back-end systems. How do you make that call?
So, Neville, that actually fits in quite a lot, especially with one of the questions we had that I'll touch on. But like we've mentioned, especially in the last year, the adaptation and incorporation of so many new applications into our business environment has resulted in a lot of companies now having their agents working on possibly not just the ERP system, but having to work on other systems as well, you know, due to digital worker working in and just the general requirements. But more so, it's not only happening in our businesses, but it's happening in our clients who we are servicing businesses, you know, from a BPO perspective. So, you know, our clients are telling us, listen, you know, acting as being a BPO service provider, my client is telling me, listen, you've been working on this ERP system of mine, but due to COVID and due to some new requirements, I now need you to interact and do the following as well. Or they require additional data, or they require additional processes to form part, which wasn't part of the initial when we started working for them. Now, these requirements have to be met. And obviously, yeah, always first point of call, because integration will always result in a much higher level of efficiency within your business process than potentially using something like RPA. But there are situations like this where you've got very rapid deployment of new technologies or new requirements that come in that needs to be met. And that is where RPA plays the role, is being able to actually roll out some form of front-end integration, if you want to put it like that, that can actually go and start, okay, listen, my agent's going to continue working on my ERP system, but you want them to work on this system and this system is now, well, no problem, because what we'll do is my agent will work on our one and we'll get a robot to work on those ones for you while it works. We see that as a big aspect on it. And I just want to touch on, there's one question that was raised with regards to the ethos of BPESA, and that is obviously promoting our BPO space and promoting the growth of our BPO environment. And the concern, one of the questions is that obviously AI, chatbots, RPA, one of the focuses of it is perceived as being to reduce headcount. Now, one thing that we have seen, and off the bat, like with the different revolutions that we had, as technology and industries change, there's a shift in the markets in where our workforce goes. But from what we have seen, especially within the BPO and the call center space, is that, especially on the RPA side, is that the focus is not for the companies to actually reduce their headcount. The focus is on being able to use and optimize the workforce they have now to generate more revenue for the business and to be able to generate more value for the clients. Because it is, like we've mentioned, there's so many applications coming in, which is resulting in our agents' performance dropping. And the idea behind the RPA is to then actually use the technology to re-enable our agents to become more productive in what they do. Because that is what sets us apart in Africa versus the other countries, is the quality and how we engage with our clients. Because that's why they get it. Most of our places are call centers because of how we actually engage, and that's the value. So that's what we want to enable our agents to do, and that you can never replace with technology.
Yeah, thank you, Jean.
Yeah, Jean, I think I can also attest to that. You know, it's all about customer satisfaction. If you think about a call center, if you phone into your bank's call center or to your mobile provider's call center, you know, you've got agents there that answers your call, but then, you know, they put you through to another guy. This guy, you need to repeat the same story over and over and over, and eventually your issues are not sorted out. So, you know, by providing these systems and mechanisms and integrations so that they have the right information available right there and then, they can make a decision and they can move the customers, you know, they can match that customer expectation in terms of, you know, being speedily resolvable for the issues that they're experiencing.
Yeah, it all makes good sense. Yeah, so in other words, process is everything. You know, I think even when you're baking a cake, right? If you don't follow the process, you're going to end up with something else. So, so extremely important, and I think often underestimated in terms of the importance, you know, of back-end integration. I think, Jean, also to your point, you know, in many cases as a BPO, you do not have access to the systems that you have been given to work on. You know, you're working on a transaction system. It's not yours. It belongs to your client. And while you can engage with them and ask them to improve and to integrate certain things, in the meantime, I think a robot is a great way to actually intervene and enhance and to support those ideas. Jed's got a great question on the chat about, you know, how do we, you know, there's this discussion about robots, you know, is going to affect the number of jobs and the number of people. And I think that is the first concern. I think the RPA vendors put way too much emphasis on a return on investment that replaces people. I think the emphasis rather is on enhancing services in very quick time, very quick response, and making sure that the agents, that the people that are already in the jobs get elevated to a higher level of service and to delivering more complex tasks. Will it have an impact? Absolutely. I mean, when the motor vehicle came along at the turn of the last century, there were many people that were out of jobs, but the world progresses, and today we have many, many people involved in the automotive industry that would not have had jobs. So I think the way we need to look at this is that, you know, as more and more systems, and especially cloud-based systems, come along, there's going to be more requirement to make sure that these are tied together and that we use robots effectively and responsibly. I think we need to think about robots in that sense, that there's a role for them, and if applied correctly, it can add huge value. You know, in terms of, you know, as you asked, Jed, how do we convert this into an outsourced service? I think that's a great opportunity for the BPO operators to start thinking about this and to start thinking about how does automation become a service that can be applied very quickly, very effectively as a service, as opposed to just enhancing your current and cutting costs out of your current environment. I think that's a great question, and it's something that as an industry we need to be thinking about. I'm sure some of the BPOs already working on, you know, how they can add value. I'm quite interested to see how, as an industry. We will develop digital services and what that actually means. I think this is that we're at the start of the journey and very exciting times ahead. We're coming to the end of, the time period. And so I just want to make sure that we've basically got 5 minutes left, but if I need 2 minutes at the end. So if you guys can use the 3 minutes, 1 minute each, just to make a closing statement, that will be really great. So I'm going to go in reverse order. Jean, if you can just close out in 1 minute, and then I'll hand back over to Mike and then over to you, Jacques.
Thanks, Neville. I think my closing statement is it's all about what BPESA is. And that is about providing a platform and environment for South Africa to be able to enhance how we supply outsourced services to the globe. And the key thing for us to be able to keep competitive is adopting technology. Yes, it is disruptive and it is ever changing, but if we don't, we will never keep up with the rest of the world. And adding our African flair to how we do things in how we provide our services is what sets us apart in the world.
Mike?
Yes, I think one of the things that struck me as I was, listening to Jean and Jacques, as well as there's a lot of solutions out there, but ultimately we need to bring them together. It's a combination, and I think you mentioned about the process being sort of the golden thread, but it's about getting the right mix and understanding how to put that together that really creates business value. And I think looking at it from how do we really make a significant change, how do we create value for business and ultimately for customer. So I think, as long as one doesn't look at these things as silver bullets and isolated things, I think we bring them together. I think there's potential to make a significant change and add significant value and improve what we can offer out there.
Well, absolutely. Thanks, Mike. Jacques?
I think I'll do my outro based on a question raised by Kenilwe. I think any organization, yes, BPM, there's value in investing in a specific BPM technology, but it's not about the investment in the BPM technology. It's more the correct implementation of that BPM, because like she mentioned, if people don't like the systems, they won't adopt it, or there's no value in it. So there's no value in automating your if I can say it, your leave process. That's not doing anything for the bottom line of the organization. But implementing BPM in the correct way can add tremendous value to the core business line, and that is what the strategy of the business needs to be. Not just automating everything, but looking at the right processes to automate.
Good point. I think from the poll, if those of you that saw the poll results, it looks like people, many of you want to add more systems to what you already have, which means more integration and more back-end thought around processes. But that seems to be, I think this is a much deeper discussion than we've actually touched on. And so maybe in the future we'll have a more deeper discussion into some of these areas, which I think has been very interesting. So with that, I'd like to just thank everyone that has attended. Thank you for your attendance and your support. And then also thank you to the panel members. Thank you for taking time out of your busy days to be here with us today. Very much appreciated. And just a closing statement from myself. I mean, BPESA is here to serve. We absolutely are serious about growing digital in whatever form in South Africa, to support digital companies and to make sure that South Africa stands up and stands out in the world as a leader in the digital space. And so with that, I'd like to thank you all until next month, third Wednesday of next month. We'll be back with the 5th edition of this webinar. Look forward to seeing you. Thank you very much. And until then, bye-bye.